My name is Susanna, though for the past 6 years, everyone's called me Susie. I'm 33 now, and honestly, when I catch my reflection, I barely recognize the woman staring back. Before Brandon entered my life, I was a model. I was that girl who counted every calorie, hit the gym 5 times a week, and could recite the nutritional facts of anything you put on my plate. I thrived on that lifestyle, the discipline, the routine, the confidence I felt in my own body. It all made sense to me back then. Then Brandon came crashing into my world like a storm. He was magnetic, always attentive, and seemed to know exactly what to say. He'd tell me I was stunning, that I didn't need to push myself so hard, that I was already perfect as I was. Now, looking back, I realize how calculated his words were. But at the time, I believed every one. I thought I'd finally found someone who loved me for who I was, not just for my looks in front of a camera. We married after a year of dating. Brandon persuaded me to leave modeling behind. He insisted I didn't need the pressure, that we'd be fine financially, and that he wanted to take care of me. So, I quit. And almost instantly, things began to shift. He'd come home with pizza and beer, saying we should just relax and enjoy life. Whenever I brought up joining a gym, he'd laugh and say, "You're already beautiful. Why waste the money?" But then he'd slip in these little remarks, jokes, he called them. "Susie, maybe skip seconds tonight," he'd say with a smirk. Or, "Wow, those jeans are getting tight, huh?" Always with a grin, always followed by, "Just kidding," if I looked upset. But the sting lingered every time. The weight started to creep on. Not all at once, but gradually. 20 pounds turned into 30, then 40. I developed a strange, unhealthy relationship with food and my body, something I'd never experienced, not even during the intense pressure of modeling. At least back then, I felt in control. Now, I was spiraling. And Brandon's jokes never stopped. I tried to find other work. I really did. I took a job at a boutique downtown, but Brandon would comment on how exhausted I looked, how the customers probably weren't worth the trouble, how maybe it wasn't worth it. I quit after 3 months. Then I tried working at a friend's coffee shop. Same story. Brandon never outright told me not to work. He was too clever for that. Instead, he'd plant seeds of doubt, make little observations that burrowed into my mind until I convinced myself I wasn't cut out for it. I even enrolled in an auto mechanics class at the community college. I'd always been curious about how things worked, and thought maybe I could make something of it. Brandon found it hilarious. My wife, the mechanic, he joked to his friends, shaking his head like I'd said I was joining the circus. I made it halfway through the course before I stopped going. We moved to a cottage in the mountains that Brandon inherited from his uncle. It's beautiful, I'll admit, secluded, surrounded by pines, with breathtaking views. But it's also isolating. The nearest town is 40 minutes away, and I don't have my own car. Brandon works from home as a consultant, and I just exist here, I suppose. Despite everything, the weight gain, the failed jobs, the loneliness, I kept telling myself Brandon loved me. He had to, right? He was always so concerned about my safety, always making sure I was protected. He was the one who insisted I get a substantial life insurance policy. We spent months dealing with insurance agents, Brandon by my side at every meeting, making sure I understood the policies, ensuring I got the best coverage. The premiums came out of my old modeling savings, but Brandon said it was necessary, he couldn't bear to lose me like he'd lost others. That's what made everything make sense to me, or so I thought. Brandon had been in 2 serious relationships before me. Both women died in accidents. His first girlfriend, Melissa, died in a car accident at 24. His second, Jennifer, fell down the stairs in her apartment and broke her neck. Brandon claimed to be devastated both times, or so he told me. He'd get this haunted look when he mentioned them, which wasn't often. I convinced myself that his behavior, the protectiveness that sometimes felt like control, the need to always know where I was, the jokes that cut too deep, was all because he was traumatized. He'd lost 2 women he loved. Now he was terrified of losing me, too. So he kept me close. Maybe too close. But I told myself it was out of love and fear, not malice. That's what I repeated to myself every day. We'd been married nearly 6 years when everything unraveled. Brandon decided to host a small dinner party, just a few friends, nothing elaborate, but he wanted it to be special. The morning of the party, he asked me to drive into town for groceries and beer. It was a simple request, something I'd done countless times. But the day before, something had happened that I couldn't shake. I'd gone for a walk, one of the few things I still did for myself, and came home earlier than usual. The house was eerily quiet. I called out for Brandon, but got no response. I checked the bedroom, the kitchen, his office. Nothing. I started to worry, then heard a faint sound from the garage. I headed out, ready to call his name, when I heard his voice. He was on the phone, and something in his tone made me freeze. I stood by the door, hidden, and listened. "Yes, everything's ready," Brandon was saying. His voice was cold, emotionless, nothing like the warmth he used with me. "She won't get far. Trust me." There was a pause, then Brandon laughed, and it sent a chill through me. "The payout will be huge. We've been setting this up for years." I felt like I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure he'd hear it. I backed away, quietly, and slipped back into the house. When Brandon came in 10 minutes later, I was at the kitchen table pretending to read a magazine. He smiled like nothing had happened. "Hey babe," he said. "Want to help me plan the menu for tomorrow?" I smiled, nodded, acted completely normal, but inside my mind was racing. What had I just heard? Who was Brandon talking to? What payout? What setup? I tried to convince myself I'd misunderstood, that I was being paranoid, that there was a logical explanation. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That night, I barely slept. And the next morning, when Brandon asked me to go to the store, every alarm in my head went off. When he asked me to make the grocery run, my stomach dropped. He stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, looking completely at ease. Just another ordinary day. But I couldn't stop replaying that phone call in my mind. "Susie, can you run into town and grab the stuff for tonight?" he asked. "I've got a work call at 10 I can't miss. We need beer, steaks, the usual." I made a list. "Sure," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "What time do you need me back?" "Whenever," he shrugged. "Just before people start showing up around 6. If I said something was wrong with the car, he'd either fix it himself or tell me I was being ridiculous. Either way, I'd lose any advantage I had. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Emily and her husband Dave were supposed to come to the party. Emily had been my friend since before Brandon, one of the few from my old life who'd stuck around. I texted her. "Hey, any chance you and Dave could come by early today, like around 11? Need your help with something." She replied almost instantly. "Sure. Everything okay?" "Yeah. Just want to get a head start on prep. See you soon." I put my phone away and took a deep breath. Brandon came out of his office around 9:30. "You heading out soon?" he asked. "In a bit," I said. I wanted to tidy up the living room first. Make sure everything looks nice for tonight. He frowned. The store's going to get crowded if you wait too long. Saturday morning, you know. I know, I said, grabbing a dust cloth and starting to wipe down the coffee table. I'll go soon. Just want the place to look good. Brandon watched me for a moment, then shrugged. Okay, but don't take too long. We need those steaks to marinate for a few hours. I won't, I promised. He went back to his office. I kept cleaning, moving as slowly as I could without making it obvious. Every few minutes, Brandon would come out and mention the store, the time, how we needed to get things moving. Each time, I'd agree and say I was almost done. By 10:30, he came out looking more irritated. Susie, seriously, you need to go. I'm getting worried we won't have enough time. I'm going, I said. Just let me finish this one thing. What thing? You've been cleaning for an hour. The house is fine. I stood there, dust cloth in hand, scrambling for an excuse. I just want everything to be perfect, I said. You know how important these gatherings are to you. His expression softened a bit. I appreciate that, babe, but the groceries are more important right now. Come on. I was running out of ways to stall when I heard a car pull up outside. Thank God. Emily and Dave. Oh, that must be Emily, I said, heading for the door. She said she might come early to help. Brandon's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. You didn't mention that. Didn't I? I thought I did. She offered yesterday. Emily knocked, and I opened the door, probably a little too eagerly. Hey guys, thanks for coming early. Emily hugged me, and I could tell from her face that she knew something was wrong. She'd always been able to read me. No problem, she said. Happy to help. Dave shook Brandon's hand. Hope we're not intruding, man. Not at all, Brandon replied, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Susie was just about to head to the store. Actually, I said quickly, Dave, could you help me with something first? I think there might be something wrong with the car. It was making a weird noise yesterday. Brandon's whole body went stiff. I didn't hear any noise. It was really faint, I said, avoiding his gaze. Dave, you know about cars, right? Could you just take a quick look before I drive all the way into town? Dave nodded. Sure, no problem. The four of us walked out to the garage. Brandon was right behind me, and I could feel the tension radiating from him. Dave popped the hood and started inspecting the engine. Emily stood beside me, and I grabbed her hand, squeezing it tightly. She squeezed back. Huh, Dave said after a minute. Brandon, when's the last time you checked the brake fluid? It's fine, Brandon said curtly. I checked it last week. Well, you've got a leak here, Dave said, pointing. And this line looks damaged. See this? This is bad. Really bad. If Susie had driven this car, especially on mountain roads, she could have lost her brakes completely. The silence that followed was suffocating. I turned to Brandon. His face was blank, but I saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. Our eyes met, and in that instant, I knew he knew that I knew. Everything snapped into place, the insurance, the meetings, the constant push to increase my coverage, the weight gain he encouraged while making me feel awful about it, the isolation, the phone call I'd overheard. It all made sense. Brandon hadn't been protecting me. He'd been preparing me, fattening me up, making me worth more dead than alive. And now he tried to kill me, just like he had with Melissa and Jennifer. "I think we should call a mechanic," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "And maybe postpone the party." Brandon stared at me. Emily looked between us, sensing the tension. Dave was still examining the car, oblivious. "This is serious," Dave said. "You definitely can't drive this." I turned to Brandon. "Honey, we need to talk." His eyes went cold. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think we do." We went back inside, Emily, Dave, Brandon, and me. The air felt heavy, like before a storm. Emily kept glancing at me, worried. Dave was talking about the car, about how lucky it was we caught the brake issue before I drove anywhere. Brandon said nothing. He just sat at the kitchen table, staring at me. "Emily, can I talk to you in the bedroom for a second?" I asked. "Sure," she said quickly. We left the men in the kitchen and I closed the bedroom door behind us. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. "Susie, what's going on?" Emily asked. I told her everything. The phone call I'd overheard, the insurance Brandon pushed me to get, how he'd isolated me, made me gain weight, made me dependent, how his 2 previous girlfriends had died in accidents, and how the car's brakes had been sabotaged. Emily's face went pale as she listened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Susie, he was going to kill you." "I know," I said, my voice cracking. "He was going to send me out on that mountain road, and I would have crashed and died, and everyone would have thought it was just an accident." "We need to call the police," Emily said. "Right now." "I'm scared," I admitted. "What if I'm wrong? What if there's another explanation?" Emily grabbed my shoulders. "The brakes were cut. Dave saw it. That's not an accident. And everything else you just told me? That's not normal. None of this is normal." I nodded. She was right. I knew she was right. We went back to the kitchen. Dave was on his phone, probably looking up mechanics. Brandon was still at the table, now watching the doorway. When he saw our faces, something shifted in his expression. He knew. "Dave," Emily said carefully, "I think we need to call the police." Dave looked up, confused. "Why?" "The car didn't brake on its own," I said, my voice stronger. "Brandon tampered with it. He tried to kill me." Brandon stood up slowly. "That's insane, Susie. Why would I do that?" "For the insurance money," I said. "Just like you did with Melissa and Jennifer." Dave's eyes widened. Brandon's face turned red. "You've lost your mind," he said. "The car just has a leak. These things happen." "I heard you on the phone yesterday," I said. "You said everything was ready. That I wouldn't get far. You were talking about the payout." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Brandon laughed, but it sounded forced. "You misunderstood what you heard. I was talking about a work deal. This is paranoid, Susie. This is crazy." "Then you won't mind explaining it to the police," Emily said, already pulling out her phone. Brandon's expression changed. The mask dropped. His eyes went cold and hard. "Don't," he said quietly. "I'm calling them," Emily replied. I said, "Don't." Brandon took a step toward her. Dave moved between them. "Back off, man." Emily made the call. I stood there, watching my husband, the man I'd loved and trusted for 6 years, and saw a stranger. He didn't try to stop Emily again. He just stared at me with pure hatred. The police arrived within half an hour. We all gave statements. The officers inspected the car, spoke to Dave about what he'd found. They asked Brandon to come to the station for questioning. He went quietly, but as they let him out, he looked back at me one last time. "You'll regret this," he said. After they took him away, I sat on the couch, shaking. Emily sat with me, holding my hand. The police towed the car as evidence. The investigation moved quickly, faster than I expected. Brandon had been careless. Very careless. They found emails on his computer, texts on his phone. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years. And he hadn't acted alone. The person he'd spoken to on the phone was Marcus Collins, a college friend. They found messages between Brandon and Marcus discussing different ways to kill me, car accidents, falls, even explosives, though Brandon dismissed that as too obvious. Investigators reopened the cases of Melissa and Jennifer, Brandon's first two girlfriends. They found the same patterns, the same insurance arrangements, the same signs of tampering that had been missed or ignored before. He'd done this twice before. And gotten away with it. The trial took place 4 months later. I had to sit through every detail, how Brandon manipulated me, used me, plotted to murder me. The prosecutors showed the jury his messages with Marcus. Experts explained how the brakes had been cut, how it would have caused a crash on the mountain road, how I would have died. They showed that Brandon was the beneficiary on all my insurance policies that would have paid out over $1 million. The jury found him guilty. The judge sentenced him to 13 years in prison. It felt like both too much and not enough, but Marcus walked free. They couldn't prove he'd actually committed a crime. Planning a murder isn't the same as carrying one out, apparently. He got away. That's when the messages started. Anonymous texts, emails from accounts that vanished as soon as I tried to trace them. "You took everything from him. You'll pay for what you did. Watch your back." The police assigned me security, 2 officers who took shifts watching my house. I started seeing a therapist twice a week. But I wasn't getting better. I was getting worse. I spent weeks reading through Brandon's messages. The police had given me access to everything they'd found. I don't know why I put myself through it, but I couldn't stop. I read every conversation between him and Marcus, every scenario they discussed, every cold calculation about how much my death would be worth. One thread caught my eye. Marcus had suggested using explosives under the door. Brandon had shot him down, too obvious, he'd written. "You're an idiot." That's how people get caught. They argued about it for days. Marcus got angry, defensive. I could sense the tension between them even in their texts. That's when I had an idea. A risky one. Maybe even reckless. But I was drowning in fear and depression, and I needed it to end. I called my police contact. "I want you to publicly announce the case is closed," I said. "Say you couldn't find enough evidence against Marcus. Withdraw my security detail." "That's a terrible idea," he said. "Just do it," I insisted. "Trust me." They argued with me. My therapist argued with me. Emily thought I'd lost my mind, but I pushed until they agreed. The announcement went out. My security left. Then I sent a message to the anonymous account that had been threatening me. I told Marcus exactly what I thought of him. I called him Brandon's lapdog, his errand boy. I brought up the explosives idea and how Brandon had called him an idiot. I poked at every insecurity I'd seen in those messages. I wanted him angry. I wanted him reckless. 3 days later, someone crept up to my house at 2 in the morning. I was awake, waiting. So were the police officers hidden around the property. I watched from my bedroom window as a figure approached the side door, carrying something. He knelt down, started attaching a device to the door frame. The officers grabbed him before he could finish. It was Marcus. They found the explosives half-assembled. He'd walked right into the trap. Marcus got 11 years. With both of them in prison, the threats finally stopped. Brandon called me twice from jail. Both times, I hung up as soon as I heard his voice. Therapy started to help after that. Facing my fear, outsmarting the people who tried to destroy me, it gave me back something Brandon had stolen, my sense of control, my belief that I could handle whatever came my way. I started taking care of myself again, working out, eating well. I drove that mountain road where I was supposed to die. I cried the whole way, but I did it. I visited Melissa and Jennifer's graves and left flowers. Brandon gave an interview from prison, trying to play the victim, claiming I'd misunderstood everything. The internet tore him apart. Meanwhile, I went on TV and shared my story. The response was overwhelming. Women reached out, saying they'd been in similar situations, that my story helped them recognize warning signs in their own relationships. 2 years later, I go by Susanna again. Not Susie. That version of me died the day I learned the truth. I'm modeling again, running a blog about healing from abuse. I try to live every day like it matters, because it does. I'm alive. I survived. And that's everything.